Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us from the market site live in Times Square, New York City, we have Merav Ozair. She's a blockchain expert and professor of FinTech at Rutgers Business School. We're going to talk about unleashing the possibilities of Metaverse and Web3. It is great to have you with us, Professor. Go Scarlet Knights.
Yes. My pleasure to be here in Nasdaq, of all places.
Yes, the home of innovation. Great views of Times Square.
Yeah.
Let's start off with an overview of what Web3 and the Metaverse are.
Well, okay, so let's start. I mean, a lot of people will like to think that they are the same, but they are not really the same. If you think about it, Web3 is like the second version of the internet. We're talking about, the internet that we have today is like we call Web 2.0, and the next, what we're going to go next is Web 3.0, and everything about blockchain is basically Web 3.0, which is decentralized internet. So we basically, there's no centralized control like, nowadays, the internet is controlled by companies, whether you have to go through Google, through all kinds of companies, and get, and then we're talking about the privacy and the information, your information is basically controlled by them. And we heard about, the fiascos, I don't want to go over there, the Meta, which used to be Facebook, with whatever happened back then. The Web3 is taken into the next level and everything is decentralized. So it's not controlled by corporations. It's basically what public blockchain is all about, that everyone can tap into that, it's accessible for everyone can be part of it. And you can think about that it's kind of like a co-op, that it is governed by the users. We govern it. So that's Web3, which is the internet governed by everyone from around the world. Every user can tap to that as long as you have access to internet. So that's the basic. So it's much more than just Metaverse, if you can think about what you can build on that. Now, you need Web3 in order to the Metaverse to really scale, because nowadays, the Metaverse that are built, I call them silos. Whatever it's Decentraland or Sandbox or even the gaming, like the Wallbox and all of that, they're all like very much in a silo. So you can play in that Metaverse type of game, but once you can't take whatever assets that you purchase or build in that game or decentralized whatever and move it go with that to a different place. Yeah. So that's the silo that we think about. So that's 3D type of, what you see in the science fiction, movies, when you go into these 3Ds and etc. That's the Metaverse, everything, like the virtual spaces.
Right. So it sounds like the promise here really is for content creation. The content creator economy sounds like there's great use cases here. But to your point, it sounds like these platforms should be interoperable for them to achieve scale.
Right. Because if you think about the whole idea of Snow Crash, the book that was written in almost 30 years ago, right, 92. The idea was that it will emulate everything that we do in our physical world, and not only that, there will be interaction between the physical and the virtual space. Now, how can you interact and do everything that we used to do here in our physical world? You now in Nasdaq, right? Then you go to home, and then you go, party in some other bar with friends.
That sounds about right.
So you move around, in different spaces. We have to have this, mobility also in our virtual spaces if that's going to scale. Otherwise, whatever you bring to your virtual Nasdaq will stay in virtual Nasdaq. You can't just carry it now to your virtual bar or to your virtual home or to your virtual other places. So this interoperability is very important. Otherwise, this vision of what we want these virtual spaces to be is not feasible.
Right. Well, I mean, the technology takes time to develop, and we're so used to in this on-demand economy, the way we live our lives.
Right.
We expect the next app to be here.
Right. Exactly.
It takes a good year or two when it comes to coming up with the idea for the app, and then doing your market research, and then doing, building the specs around it, and troubleshooting and launching. It's a process. So right now, what are the major obstacles that need to be overcome when it comes to the Metaverse?
Well, I think it's a few a few main issues. One, I think even the hardware itself is not there yet. I mean, now we have this very, I don't know, cumbersome goggles that you have to wear. And if you really want to spend time, a long time, let's say, Bill Gates, who's, the founder of Microsoft, saying, oh, he believes that in less than 5 years, we're going to work in the metaverse, taking team, which is 2D to 3D. How can you work even for half an hour with this goggle? I mean, it's not sustainable, right? So the hardware also needs to evolve. So that's one aspect of it. But that's not enough. We also need all the other software and the other technology to evolve, whether it's Internet of Things, which will connect whatever we have in this virtual space to another virtual space, and of course blockchain technology will allow us to the interoperability that we're talking about, the authentication of assets, the transferability of assets from one space to another space. So there's a lot of things that needs to evolve, and we are so much at the beginning, but we're close. I mean, at least we are starting to see the seeds of that. Let's say 30 years ago, when it was taught, when the idea was, in that book, Snow Crash, we didn't even know how to do it. At least now we're trying to.
Right.
So there are the seeds that we're planting, but as you said, it takes time. Think about the internet. Internet like 30 years ago, can you compare that to what we have today?
Right. I mean, just look at what I do every day, for example. Just 2.5 years ago, I never thought this could be done at home via Zoom. Now, my home studio, the production quality is not quite as good as here, but we can have people all around the world at any time participate. Look how fast that has evolved. After years and decades of broadcast production, just one tiny piece, because of cloud technology, allows us to do it over things like Zoom. So to expect the metaverse and Web3 to be available next year or the year after, have to have a little bit of patience that it's done right.
I mean, if you think about what you just mentioned about this teleconferencing, I don't know if you remember that it was a movie, I think in the 80s, called Back to the Future.
Of course, yes.
Like I sometimes watch the reruns. It's a very cute movie. And if you think about it, the teleconferencing was sci-fi in that movie. And we thought, oh wow, that's cool. He's talking to his parents, from far. Wow. And we're doing it now every day.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, another great movie to bring up. I'm not sure if everyone has heard of it, but Disclosure with Demi Moore and Michael Douglas. But every time I think of Meta Web3, whether I'm reporting on it or sitting in the class, I always come back to that movie, because that was the first time I can remember seeing them operating in a digital world. But to your point, even then, they still had the goggles on. This is 25-ish years ago. And it hasn't evolved in terms of the hardware yet.
I think that, they haven't really thought about it yet, that it's going to really evolve that much. But now everyone is talking about the thing about, okay, let's do like a concert in the metaverse, and let's do like what Bill Gates is talking about. Let's do workplace in the metaverse. And now JP Morgan is launching their lodge in the metaverse, in this Decentraland. So how can we really do these interactions with a hardware that is very cumbersome? They haven't really thought that far, because as of now, it was mostly for games. But if you're thinking about the business use cases, the everyday use cases, it has to go beyond just a game that a kid is playing for, I don't know, half an hour, maybe an hour, and then putting it aside and moving on to something else. If you really want us to engage on a daily, regular basis, they have to take it to the next step. But they haven't really thought about the use cases yet, because the use cases that that all this hardware has been built for was for gaming. No one thought about the business use cases.
But I also think when when it comes to purpose or social good, think of all the applications there. People with disabilities, let's say for example, spinal cord injury, that could help them with their therapy, or allow them to experience other things. Or to your point about being able to go to concerts in the metaverse. Not everyone can afford to go to a concert or go to different cities to experience their favorite bands.
Just think about it's in terms of bringing community from all around the world. Let's say there's a band that I really love, in the UK, and I live, I don't know, in Senegal.
Right.
But I can't afford going, traveling to the UK. Even if they tour, they never come to my village in Senegal, I will never be able to, but I love to listen to them. But what if, I can go to the Metaverse?
Yeah.
And then it's not only that, I can engage with other people from all around the world. I love my favorite band. Just think about, this engaging with people from all around the world because they share the same interests, the same love for a person, for a band, for a cause. I in fact adopted an African elephant just for donation. Mm-hmm. But think about that, you can do it like in the Metaverse.
Yeah, that is, well, actually, that's what my grad school project is basically on leveraging blockchain technologies and NFTs for charitable giving, which also opens up that social and community component. Because as you know, with the gamers out there, part of the lure is not just the design and creation behind it, but it's the communities, digital communities.
Exactly. So now let's say that I adopted, this African elephant, and they're sending me a photo. What if they tell me you can go to the Metaverse and even tap, the elephant that you just adopted. And this engaging with this charity type of thing, whether it's you preserving the wildlife, or even like maybe a child in Africa,
right?
Or anything that you can think of or helping like a cancer, child, even here in the U.S., And let's say you can't really travel to wherever that child is, in New York, but he or she, I don't know, somewhere in Ohio or whatever. But in the Metaverse, let's say, you can have this communication with them, as if talking to them and engaging with them. And so this donation becomes more than just a donation, but like a community that is helping each other. Mm-hmm. Like the social impact is much more than just giving money.
Right.
It's giving support,
right.
Like the actual support and the connection.
And we will end that on a very positive note. It was great to have you with us at MarketSite. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.